There she is. She tells me it's recorded. Right, so welcome to tonight's lesson. Thank you so much for joining me. We're on lesson 9. Can you believe it? Lesson 9 is Unit 7, Writer's Perspective. In this lesson, we are going to cover Lesson 7.1 from your Cloudport information, Different Perspectives. Lesson 7.2, Locating and Summarizing Main Ideas. Lesson 7.3, Comparing Text. And lesson 7.4, constructing a comparative answer, however you say that word. Let's get going then. Different perspectives. So when we speak of a perspective, we mean a particular way of seeing something. This could literally refer to what a person sees in front of them. For example, if they were looking out of a window, what they could see could be described as their perspective on what is outside. The important word in this definition, however, is particular. When we speak of perspectives, we suggest that there can be more than one way of seeing. Therefore, if a woman is standing at the top of a skyscraper in New York, looking down upon the traffic and the busy sidewalks, and at the same time her friend is among a large group of people waiting to cross the street, we could say that they both have a different perspective on the same city. They are both in different places with very different views, but their perspective is still that the city is busy, even though they're in different places. On the other hand, if two friends were to go to the cinema and sit together right next to each other, they could have a very different opinion on the film they watch. For one, it could be a life-changing experience, and the other, it might be rubbish. They are in the same place at the same time, but with very different perspectives. In situations such as this, neither person is wrong. Both perspectives are valid. An example of this can be when people argue about politics or religion. Both perspectives are valid and will differ widely. Many would suggest that for a society to succeed and for political or cultural progress to occur, it is key that a variety of perspectives are freely expressed. So there is an old fable that explains perspective well, and I would like to read that to you now. You may remember this from school. It's called The Blind Man and the Elephant. There were once 6 blind men who stood by the roadside every day and begged from the people who passed. They had often heard of elephants, but they had never seen one, for being blind, how could they? It so happened one morning that an elephant was driven down the road where they stood. When they were told that the great beast was before them, they asked the driver to let them stop so that they might see him. Of course, they could not see him with their eyes, but they thought that by touching him, they could learn just what kind of animal he was. The first one happened to put his hand on the elephant's side. Well, well, he said, now I know all about this beast. He is exactly like a wall. The second felt only the elephant's tusk. My brother, he said, you are mistaken. He is not at all like a wall. He is round and smooth and sharp. He is more like a spear than anything else. The third happened to take hold of the elephant's trunk. Both of you are wrong, he said. Anybody who knows anything can see that this elephant is like a snake. The fourth reached out his arms and grasped one of the elephant's legs. Oh, how blind you are, he said. It is very plain to me that he is round and tall like a tree. The fifth was a very tall man, and he chanced to take hold of the elephant's ear. The blindest man ought to know that this beast is not like any of those things you name, he said. He is exactly like a huge fan. The sixth was very blind indeed, and it was some time before he could find the elephant at all. At last he seized the elephant's tail. Oh, foolish fellows, he cried, you surely have lost all your senses. This elephant is not like a wall or a spear or a snake or a tree, and neither is he like a fan. But any man with a particle of sense can see he is exactly like a rope. Then the elephant moved on, and the 6 blind men sat by the roadside all day and quarrelled about him. Each believed that he knew just how the animal looked, and each called the others hard names because they did not agree with him. People who have eyes sometimes act as foolishly. So this story explains perspective well by showing you that each person, while perhaps in the same position in life as others, will see things through the lens which they have been personally given. The hobbies you have, how easy your life is, the way you were brought up, your friends' opinions, the type of job you do, all of these will shape your perspective on things. And as we said before, no viewpoint is invalid. So let's talk about perspectives in literature. Some of these, hopefully, you might have read these. They are common ones. You might just understand them by the title or by the reference. But hopefully we can share what we think the main perspectives are that each of these books take. So the first one, To Kill a Mockingbird, you've obviously heard of this. You might have read it in school, you might not have, but you probably do know a little bit about this book. Would anybody like to jump in and say what they think the main perspective on this book is, the take that this book gives to us? You can write it in the chat if you want, or you can unmute yourself, feel free.
I've never read it, but
Have you not? It's a good book,
uh,
Rodri. You didn't do it in school.
no, well, I may have done. I can't remember. But I mean, you could have a perspective about killing a mockingbird.
Yeah, that's Tabitha's put a similar one. Tabitha's
In the
suggested
fact,
mocking people.
yeah.
Yeah, it's quite the
Oh, yeah, I
opposite.
suppose.
It's quite the opposite. This book is actually the perspective on this book is hugely anti-racism. So the book is quite the opposite to mocking people, really. Yeah, it's a conflicting title, isn't it? So the story is basically a black man is accused of raping a white woman. He's on trial. A white lawyer steps up to take the case because he knows it wasn't true. And the story is told through the perspective of a 6-year-old white girl. And it does that to show because she is just so baffled at why they would hate this man just because of the colour of his skin. And the way that it's told through an innocent perspective makes it baffling for the reader as well. You realise just how ridiculous judging someone by the colour of their skin is because it's told through the perspective of a child. Really, really interesting book. But yeah, the main perspective from that book is 100% anti-racism. Let's have a look at the next book. Hopefully you've heard of this one. This is more recent. The Tattooist of Auschwitz. It's a recent one, this one. I've read this one. It's a good book. I think it's got a sequel out now. What do we think the perspective, even if you haven't read this, you might be able to have a good guess at what you think the perspective of this book is going to be.
Tattooist.
It is a tattooist. Where is the tattooist? He's in Auschwitz. So what are we thinking that the perspective is going to be on that, Rodri? What do you think he's going to be telling us?
It's a tattooist who lives in that area.
Well, Auschwitz is the concentration camp that was in World War II, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it is a tattooist in the concentration camp. Yeah. So do we think?
So is it about again when we've just talked about racism?
Yeah.
Because if you could be talking about a swastika,
yes,
which is not a nice tattoo.
Not at all. No, and the swastikas were the swastikas are the signs of the Nazis, aren't they? So what sort of perspective? A story of his time out there, Casper. Well done. Yes, this exactly is. It is a memoir of the tattooists of Auschwitz time out there. So they used to tattoo the numbers on their wrist, didn't they, to show what number these people were. It was horrific. And this is the tattooist. So yeah, the perspective is his personal story inside Auschwitz. It's horrific. And very, very anti-Nazi, as you can imagine. So the perspective is a personal memoir of how anti-Nazi and yeah, about World War II. Well done. You're doing really well on this one. Last one here. Oh, sorry. One of my favourite books, Gone with the Wind. Such a beautiful book. Quite a surprising viewpoint in this book. Quite a surprising perspective. I was surprised by it anyway. Has anyone seen the film or read the book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read the book. I know it's a musical, isn't it?
So it's a film. Yeah, it's a very old film. I think it's like 3 hours long. It's huge. So if anyone doesn't know, it's a story about the Civil War in America, which was fighting about slavery. So the North was very anti-slavery, the South was very pro-slavery, and this is about it's set in the Civil War and it's set in the South. So does anyone want to take a guess at what they think the controversial perspective is going to be in this book? And it is a hard perspective. I was really shocked when I read this. It really did put me off. It's a beautiful book, but you can't neglect that awful perspective in it.
Repeat what it's about again, and then I can see if I can come out with an answer.
So it's written in the South of America during the Civil War, which is where the North and South were at war over slavery. The South was very, very heavy on owning slaves, very heavy on plantations. And this is written from the perspective of a very rich white woman who herself owned slaves. So what slant do you think she's going to take on slavery? What's her perspective going to be? Scarlett O'Hara. You hopefully have heard of Scarlett O'Hara.
Well, if it would it be because if she owned slaves, she would write it on perspective of it. Not well. It depends because she might do it in perspective that it's not so bad.
Well done, Rodri. Yeah. But, go on, Alex.
Yeah.
Do you want to unmute and chat with us?
If that's the main. If that's the perspective it's from, and that's the main perspective she's always had, then she's going to speak positive about it because why should anyone else?
Yes, it is. Well done, Alex. Well done, Rodri. She is pro-slavery, hugely pro-slavery. Not just she thinks that there should be slaves. The slaves in her house follow her during the war. They carry on being her servants, even though they're fleeing a war. The book is written from the perspective that the slaves still want to be slaves. It's ridiculous to us to read now. It's horrific. It is a really difficult read, but it's written. I mean, people obviously believed that at the time. People fought wars to keep slaves, so there must have been that perspective. I think it's really interesting to sometimes read a perspective that is other than what you personally agree with, that is quite difficult to read. It is a challenging read from that perspective. Everything else about the book is beautiful. It's so lovely. It's one of the best love stories ever. It's really tragic. But yeah, a really unsurprising perspective that Gone with the Wind, very, very famous, is pro-slavery. Not good. So thank you very much for joining in. That was great. Thank you so much. So now we've established what perspective is. We're moving on from what the writer is saying to how they are saying it. You're often going to be asked to explain how the writer conveys their ideas. Of course, this will also include telling us what that perspective is, but you'll be focusing on the delivery of the viewpoint. This is tricky and it's something many students struggle with. So let's break it down a bit now and take a look at ways that we can do this. We'll be closely looking here at the article, The Parallels Between Scottish Nationalism and Racism Are Clear by Claire Hewken. This is taken directly from your Cloudport information, so you've hopefully seen it before, and if not, it's there in lesson 7.2 information for you to look at after this lesson. So in this article, Claire Hewken is responding to comments made by Sadiq Khan that comparing Scottish nationalism, the political movement for Scottish independence from Britain, to racism and religious intolerance. Merely by looking at the headline of this article, we can immediately see that she agrees with Khan's argument. The headline is, "The parallels between Scottish nationalism and racism are clear." The subheading is, "There is a certain irony to white people with progressive politics rubbishing what Sadiq Khan has to say about racism." Also indicates another idea that she expands upon further in the article, that there is a certain irony to so-called progressive white politicians who have never been subjected to racism, telling Sadiq Khan, a victim of racist oppression, how to define racism and what examples of racism look like. By reading the full article, however, we see that Hewken's perspective is a bit more complex than her headline conveys. As we've previously seen in other sections of this course, one strategy for locating the main ideas of a text is to read both the introduction and conclusion. If the author has created an effective article, both the introduction and conclusion should provide an overview of her perspective on the issue and summarize some of her complete key points. In this article, Hewken's introduction provides a compact yet informative summary of her main idea. Whereas Hewken's headline seems to suggest that she completely agrees with Khan's comments, her introduction shows that she has some reservations about what he said, but she still feels that the general point he made is important and should be explored further. She argues that Scottish nationalism and racism are not the same, however. For their arguments to be effective, they both rely on detrimental cultural and political barriers between people. This is explained further in the conclusion, where she states that she does not want to denounce either Khan or his critics. However, it is appropriate to draw comparisons between both political perspectives, because even a progressive form of Scottish nationalism relies on categorising people into us and them, which is language that victims of racism are very familiar with. So now that we've looked at the introduction and conclusion of the text, we have located the primary ideas of the text and how we can summarize them. You can write a short summary sentence or two to explain the main ideas in the text in your own words that you understand. Your Cloudport information has a summary for this Hewken article that we've just looked at. So take a look at that and perhaps write your own and compare the two. This is a great way to summarize what the writer is saying. As we learned when we studied different text formats, a writer needs to convey their main ideas quickly in the introduction to gain a reader's interest and let them know what they will be reading about. And then they need to summarize their main ideas in a conclusion. However, what about the main chunk of the article, the parts in between the introduction and the conclusion? Here we find lots of secondary ideas, and they need to be understood and summarized by us as well. To do this, we need to go back to one of our previous lessons where we covered topic sentences. A topic sentence, if you remember, is a sentence in which the main idea of the particular paragraph is summed up. It's usually the first sentence of the paragraph, but not always. So looking at the secondary ideas in an article through the topic sentences in each paragraph looks a little bit like this. This is taken directly from your Cloudport information. This is a screenshot directly from it. This is the topic sentence in each paragraph of the article and a brief summary of what this is saying and the perspective it shows. For the sake of the timing in this lesson, we won't read these out now, but they're in your lesson information and you can take a look at them in your own pace. So now we've learned what perspective is in an article, and we've learned how to locate that perspective and summarize it. Now let's look at what you're going to be asked to do in the exam, which is to say how the writer conveys their ideas. Your Cloudport information here has a really good summary on the Sadiq Khan article we've been talking about. But to give another example for you so that you have two to look at, I've chosen to look at another example here. In your exam, the extracts you see will be presented just like this, with brief information of the original format for you to use as context in your answer. It will be very helpful. Take note of it. This extract is from Such Were the Joys, an autobiographical essay by George Orwell, published in 1952. Here, Orwell writes about his experience of school dinners in St. Cyrians.
When you say this is, sorry to interrupt there. When you say this is going to be an exam, you don't mean this actual article is. You mean this kind of. Do you mean this kind of question will be in the exam, or do you mean?
So what I meant specifically was, hey, if I go back, that paragraph that you see on the screen now, that is context that will be given to you in your exam. So you're not going to be given an article and expected to just assume where it's from. You will be given a little bit in the exam, always, no matter where the article's from, telling you where it was taken from, what year it was taken from, to give you the context. I thought you meant that.
You don't mean the Pacific.
No, sorry, Roger. Sorry to confuse. No,
I thought you mean. I thought that's what you didn't mean that, but I just wanted to clarify.
I'll clarify. We're going to do another one straight after this, and I'll clarify again which bit. But you will always get some information in an exam of context. Use it. You know, I bang on and on about audience and purpose, and that's exactly what you're going to get given in an exam. You'll be given the context to work out the audience and purpose. So have a think about that now while we read through this text. I've just knocked my bin over. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Let me get back. So the food was not only bad, it was also insufficient. Never before or since have I seen butter or jam scraped on bread so thinly. I do not think I can be imagining the fact that we were underfed when I remember the lengths we would go to in order to steal food. On a number of occasions, I remember creeping down at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning through what seemed like miles of pitch black stairways and passages, barefooted, stopping to listen after each step, paralysed with about equal fear of Sambo, ghosts and burglars, to steal stale bread from the pantry. The assistant masters had their meals with us, but they had somewhat better food, and if one got half a chance, it was usual to steal leftover scraps of bacon rind or fried potato when their plates were removed. As usual, I did not see the sound commercial reason for this underfeeding. On the whole, I accepted Sambo's view that a boy's appetite is a sort of morbid growth, which should be kept in check as much as possible. A maxim often repeated to us at St. Cyprian's was that it is healthy to get up from a meal feeling as hungry as when you sat down. So this, as it says, is taken from an autobiography from George Orwell, published in 1952. It was published after his death. He didn't want it published while he was alive. That might be useful context as well. So let's take a look here. My favourite, I will bang on about this forever. Audience. Does anyone want to take a guess of what they think the audience would be? Bearing in mind, as I say, it wasn't published in his lifetime. Feel free to unmute yourself and shout out, or have a jot down in the chat box. What do we think the audience might be? I've written an example, so if no one wants to speak theirs, I will give you a suggestion.
Is it like sort of for research sort of thing? So if it's after he's died, then people doing research about him, maybe he's read other books from him before.
Very good, Alex.
Find this.
Yeah, so for documentation purposes, isn't it? Yeah, very much.
Is it also a bit sort of, I don't know, not I don't know what the word is for it, but you know, sort of a bit silly because it's saying things like ghosts and burglars, you know.
Yeah, George Orwell's a bit silly. Yeah, he does do very funny plays. The importance of being earnest is very funny. Yeah, well done for spotting that. I think he actually wrote this in reply to a friend that went to that school that talked about how good it was. So he kind of did his like reply to it about.
Talking about a time. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, fine. Go on, Rodri.
Is he talking about a time when there was less food, and that's what they're talking about, stealing food and stuff like that?
Yeah, so he's writing about pre-war, or I think it was between the two world wars, but there wasn't that little food. He did go to a very, very good, expensive boys' school. He's talking about very upper class people here, so they won't have been starving. And as he says, the staff were fed a lot better. So it sounds like he was deliberately misfed. So yeah, I think you're completely right, Alex. This was written down mainly for documentation reasons. He wanted to share his side of it, and he is a bit silly, bit funny. So purpose. What do we think the purpose was then? Now we know the audience. Go on, Alex.
I remember the word entertain. So to entertain and inform, that's why it's got a bit of silliness. But also,
Yeah, very good. Yeah, he does write everything to entertain. I know he didn't release this while he was alive, but he is a playwright. He does write comedy things a lot. So yeah, you can't get out of that habit of trying to entertain people, can you? Do you know what the word is for entertain and inform at the same time, Alex? You were very good on that one. There's a word that means those two. Do you know it? Begins with D.
no, I thought I had it then, but then you said that. And,
Oh, you were so close, but I thought you were going to say it to me when you said entertain and inform. It's didactic. Didactic is when you entertain and inform at the same time. Well done. So we've got our purpose and our audience. Methods and techniques. What does he do in this? What does he use to tell us his story effectively? This is where you would be talking about all those, the last two lessons we've been doing with the, if you can spot any metaphors, onomatopoeia, puns, repetition, things like that. That is the methods and techniques. The tone that he uses, the tense that he's using, all of those things are how he is telling it. I'll give you some examples at the end, so don't worry. And the writer's viewpoint or perspective. Remember, we've just been talking about perspective. What is your main take on this? What is the writer's main view about how he feels about school dinners when he was in school?
I think what he's trying to get at is, as like you said before, he's saying that the staff themselves are getting better food than the other, and I think he's not. I'm wondering if it's using. I'm trying to think, because you were talking about metaphors, weren't you, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. We'll have a look in a second at the methods if you want, because it is tricky. The methods is very tricky. But you're right. You're completely right on his perspective. Yeah. So he's talking about the children being mistreated as compared to the staff, isn't he? That they shouldn't have been underfed. So let's take a look. I've jotted down some examples. There's no right or wrong in this. I just thought I'd write some examples for people at home that are watching that haven't been able to join in the discussion. So my audience suggestion was he's talking to his Edwardian middle upper class contemporaries. He isn't talking here to people that don't know what a boarding school seems like. He seems like he's talking to people who know about the world he's depicting, doesn't he? Purpose to document. Yeah, well done, Alex. Document and entertain. Well done. Methods and techniques. He's using emotive storytelling here, isn't he? You know, when he talks about the kids being hungry and having to steal food, very emotive language and a somber tone. It's, you know, he does have some jokes in here about the ghosts and the burglars and the ghouls and stuff, but mainly he's talking about starving children. It is quite somber. And yeah, well done, Rodri. His writing viewpoint and perspective is that children in school were kept hungry and deliberately underfed. Well done. So let's look at our second piece now. This, again, at the top is the information that you would be given in an exam. This is the context that would come with the article. Make sure that you read it. It's massively important, especially for working out things like the viewpoint and the audience. So extract 2 this is, and it is titled How Schools Can Join Food Revolution Day 2015. This appeared on the website jamieoliver.com in May 2015. Food Revolution Day is kicking off on Friday the 15th of May to get children everywhere excited about good, fresh, real food. It's a global day of action to celebrate the importance of cooking from scratch and to raise awareness of how it impacts our health and happiness. Greenvale School in Lewisham, London is a community special school for children and young people between the ages of 11 and 19 who have severe and profound learning difficulties. On Food Revolution Day 2014, all the students in the school took part in Jamie's live lesson in some way, even if they were not able to practically get involved in the cooking due to because of their physical disability. I didn't like that. They were still able to smell and feel the ingredients with support from staff. Some of the children focused on shaking up the salad dressing, and others were given tasks of chopping, grating, picking herbs, and wrapping based on ability. Each class had set up their tables in front of the screen, and students were excited and well prepared. So that's a much different story, isn't it? Very, very different. Still talking about food in school.
I can remember when Jamie Oliver went into school. I think he wanted to make school dinners more healthier.
He did, and he took away our turkey twizzlers. And I'll never forgive him.
Yeah, and there was he looked at chicken nuggets, I think.
He did. I remember
rolled
that
them up
one.
to show what,
Yeah.
see what was inside and all that.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
done. That's exactly right. That's
But
him. And this is why I think this is why he's talking about this. I think this was very much in his time of really knuckling down on school dinners, wasn't he? And he's gone completely the other way, which is why it's so interesting to compare these two, because it's always nice to get a very, very different perspective. So audience, what do we think Jamie Oliver's audience was? This is where the context comes into play. We know that it was written on his personal website. Alex, hand up, go on.
Turn the camera. Parents and teachers.
Yeah, parents and teachers. Yeah, people who can get this into their school. Absolutely that. Yeah. What sort of people's opinions around food are you going to have reading this? If you're reading an article on jamieoliver.com, what are your opinions on food going to be?
Whether it's healthy.
Yeah, you're going to be looking for healthy food.
Jamie Oliver, a lot of chefs are not so they don't cook it as healthy as Jamie Oliver does.
Not at all, no.
I think he's one of the healthiest chefs.
Yeah.
Even though his is not completely healthy, because you can get even healthier than him, but he generally was like, I think, one of the cared about the health more than anything.
Very good spot, Rodri. Yeah. He's preaching to the converted. Go on,
Alex. There's nothing healthier than an idiot sandwich.
Yes, yeah. See, Gordon Ramsay would have really shook up the school system, wouldn't he? Well done. Yeah, so he's preaching to the converted on this website, isn't he? You're not going on his website if you are part of the Turkey Twizzler clan. You're not going on there if you hate healthy food. You're going on the website because you already want to learn about healthy food, and you agree with Jamie Oliver. He's very much preaching to the converted. But yeah, I think what he's aiming at is people that work in schools that can then make this bigger. So it says how schools can join. Yeah, it's not for the everyday person, is it really? Purpose. So we've worked out what our audience is. What is his purpose in writing this article? Easier, this one. Favor. Thank you very much in the chat. To inform. 100%. Yeah. He's telling you what Food Revolution Day is and how you can take part. Methods and techniques in this. This is the hard one. This is the tricky one. So in the last one, we had emotive language. We had a somber tone. What do we see in this one that's quite different? We're going to do some work on tone. I am going to do a lesson with you on tone, because anyone want to take a guess what the tone they can spot in this article is? A positive tone, Tabitha, 100%, very positive. Yeah, excellent. The exclamation mark at the end as well, very emotive, very, very upbeat, isn't it? Yeah, not at all depressing, not at all somber. You wouldn't be promoting something if you were very depressive, would you? And the writer's viewpoint or perspective, what is the takeaway perspective that we get from this article? Go on, Alex, hand up.
Anyone can cook.
Very good. Anyone can cook. Yeah, even children with profound learning difficulties. It says there they're given activities based on what they can do. Brilliant. Tabitha, to be more healthy. Exactly that as well. Yeah, very, very good. Well spotted. So the audience that I noted down, yeah, people that are already interested in food. The purpose, absolutely to inform. Colloquial language, did we spot that? This is not formal language, not like the Oscar Wilde one. Very colloquial, very everyday. And yeah, an excited tone, a happy, jolly tone. And the viewpoint or perspective that good, fresh food that children can prepare themselves. Very different to the other one. Children here are involved. They are preparing their own food. They're not kept locked away from it. They're not stealing it in the middle of the night. It isn't stale bread with a scrape of jam. It's good, fresh food. Very, very different. Well done, everyone, for spotting that one. So we've looked at our two texts now, and we've learned how to find the main ideas and how to talk about how the writer conveys them. That's the tricky bit. Now for the main part of the question, which you will get in your exams, how to compare the two. Alex, anyone can cook. Chef Oh, thank you for quoting Chef Gusteau Ratatouille. Anyone can cook, definitely. Jamie, did Jamie Oliver just steal that quote, by the way? I think he did, didn't he? He just stole it. And the main part of the question that you will get in your exams is how to compare two articles, how to compare those ideas and perspectives that we've spotted in them. You may often see this described in the exam as synthesize. It's wanting you to compare and contrast. This will differ depending on what the exam question specifically asks you, and we'll talk about that more in a future lesson. We're going to talk more in a future lesson and cover the exam questions. But for now, just be aware that they will ask you to synthesize, but based on maybe different things. You could be synthesizing what the writer is saying or how they're saying it. In your course information, you'll find this done in a really, really good comparison essay style answer on the Hukin article that we previously looked at, the Sadiq Khan one, and another similar one. But to give you an extra example, we're going to do it now on the George Orwell and Jamie Oliver extracts we've just been focusing on. Did I say Oscar Wilde, George Orwell? The answer given in your CloudLearn information focuses on comparing how the writer of each article conveys their ideas. We're going to simplify it a little and just compare one with the other for now. But yes, there is a different option to this. On your Cloudport information, we look at the Hukin article on Sadiq Khan, and there is written for you an essay style answer that compares the two. It's very, very good. It's just too lengthy for us to deal with today.
I think I finished that.
Have you?
Well, I finished that ages ago because it was before the midterm assessment, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, well done, Roger. Yeah. How did you find that one? Was it good? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to give the game away because I don't know if they've all done it, but I think one article was aiming at the Scottish National Party being obviously racist, but the other one was showing that it isn't actually racist.
Yes,
sort of
well
thing.
done.
I don't want to say any more because
don't give the answers away. But yeah, I'm glad you like that one. It's a very good suggestive answer for you. Definitely say go and have a look at that on your Cloudport information. We're going to do a different one here now, just simply partly for time. It's a very long-winded, the other one, and then partly so that you have two different ones to compare. Tabitha, you've seen that one. Brilliant. Well done. So similarities and differences between the two that we've just looked at. So the ones based on food, the one by George Orwell, not Oscar Wilde. What was I on about? George Orwell and Jamie Oliver. Let's have a look at comparing those two. Would anyone like to give me some similarities between those two extracts, extract 1 and 2? There are some, not many.
They're both about food.
Well done. They are both about food. Yeah, easy peasy. They're both about food. Yeah, specifically food in school. Tabitha, well done. Yeah, Tabitha as well, both on school. Yeah, so yeah, they're on food, but specifically food in schools, aren't they? Yeah. Any other similarities we can spot? I only found 2. I struggled with this one. I only found 2. So well done. Let me have a show. School dinners, and they're both male authors. It does sometimes come into play whether the author is male, female, because remember we talked about how your experiences affect your perspective. That might affect their perspective. Both on children's food well-being. Very good. Yeah, they're both on children's well-being. Didn't pick up on that one at all. Yeah, because it's such a difference in well-being that I would put that under difference, but they are both concerning well-being. Well spotted, Alex. Very, very good. So differences between those, millions of differences. Can you hit me with some differences?
One was comparing, the staff were getting more food than maybe the children. The other one was, I would say, joining the children into it and being more healthy for the children.
Very good.
Shall I say?
Yeah, so staff nice, staff not nice. There's a big difference there. Alex has said years apart. Yeah, years and years apart. Yeah, a whole world war apart. It's a very, very different time that we're talking about. Again, that is why the context that you get given in your exam above the extract will be hugely important to you. Because if you were to read the first extract, for example, the George Orwell one without context and think it was more recent, you could be well thinking, oh my God, where's Jamie Oliver at? Why isn't he up in arms about this poor private school that aren't feeding the children? Yeah, very, very important that they're both years apart. Anything else we can spot? Any differences between those two extracts? Anyone else want to chime in with a difference that they spotted? I have got some written down, so I'll share those. Tabitha, Tone, 100%. Yeah, well done.
What was one more? Well, I was going to say more. One was more fiction than the other, but I'm saying that the one was fiction and the other one was more non-fiction, but I don't know because he probably is in some ways expressing what it was like at that time.
Yeah, well done, Rodri. So it is autobiographical. So we should say that isn't fiction because an autobiography is fact, but he has been questioned on that. He has been called on by a lot of the students and teachers that were at that school who said it wasn't anything like that. So yeah, like I say, he is a story writer. He's known for creating stories. You do tend not to lose that wanting to entertain people, so he could have been writing that with an element of fiction. And you're right to pick up that it was written as a story, whether it's fiction or not, it's written as a story, whereas the Jamie Oliver one is written as an article to inform, like we said.
Well, it is, because it is something that was on TV, wasn't it, as well? So
yeah, absolutely. So let's take a look at some differences that I spotted. The time period, well done for spotting that. The tone, well done, Tabitha. The language used, the formal language versus the colloquial upbeat language. One is about hungry children stealing scraps. The other is about happy children preparing healthy meals. You couldn't really get much different than that, could you? So earlier in the lesson, I said to you, we don't just want to focus on what the writer is saying, but how they convey their ideas to us. We've just discussed some of the hows in the similarities and differences on the last slide. In your Cloudport information, the essay style answer you were given focuses expertly on the how part of this question. This is key. Again, I urge you to go back and read back over that. Take a look at how it doesn't focus on what the writer's ideas are, but how they convey them. If the question is asking you how, you need to focus on how. We don't want to hear what the writer is saying, because the examiner can read for themselves what the article is saying. We want to hear the how. On this lesson now, we're going to keep it a little more simple for time's sake. So we're going to compare the writer's perspective. So we're going to compare the what and not how they present those. So let's pretend our essay question in this instance is compare the differences in how school dinners are portrayed in the two extracts. Here is a sample answer for this. I haven't written this. This is from BBC Bitesize. In extract 1, school dinners sound unhealthy as Orwell complains that they are insufficient and the boys are underfed. There was not enough food for the children to feel satisfied. In extract 2, school dinners sound healthy as the food is good, fresh, real food. This extract states directly that the Revolution Day raises awareness of how it impacts our health. The children resort to stealing extra food in extract 1 as they are still hungry after school dinners. It was usual to steal leftover scraps. Whereas in extract 2, the children are more involved as all of the students took part. The food is not kept away from them. In extract 2, the children are encouraged to enjoy working with the food. Students were excited and well prepared. This suggests that they will look forward to eating it too. Jamie Oliver's Day intends to celebrate the importance of cooking from scratch. However, Orwell's extract implies a negative attitude towards eating, since appetites should be kept in check as much as possible, and you leave a meal feeling as hungry as when you sat down. So in this first paragraph, we can see the topic of this sentence is the healthiness of both portrayals of school dinners. We first get the unhealthiness of extract 1 with quotes as evidence, and then the healthiness of extract 2 again with quotes. Sticking with the one topic and showing how it is presented in both extracts efficiently compares them with each other. Paragraph 2 is concerning the involvement the children have with the food. Extract 1 shows how children are apart from the food and have to steal it. Then this is compared immediately by stating that the children in extract 2 are involved. Quotes are again used sparingly and embedded to prove the point while also being compact. In the final paragraph, we look at the attitudes surrounding food. Extract 2 is spoken of first, saying children are excited and encouraged, and then this is contrasted with the negative experience of the children in extract 1. Quotes are again used for proof. You can see each paragraph is very neat, with a simple sentence on each extract being all that is needed. We'll talk more about the structure of these essay style answers in a future lesson, but for now I hope this makes it clearer to you how you locate the main ideas of a text and then compare them with another. As I've said, you've already got another example of this in your Cloudport course, so please take a look at that for another lengthier way of how this can be done. And remember, the one we've gone for here, the essay style question that I've come up with in this one, is compare the differences in how school dinners are portrayed in the two extracts. This question could well have been written and often will be given to you in an exam as compare how the writers convey. In the how instance, you don't want to be talking about the what. That would be, if we go back, the how would be the methods and techniques. You would say Jamie Oliver uses a colloquial tone to express it. The colloquial tone does this. He uses an excited tone, which does this, and then you would compare that with the tone used in the other one, and you would say how those ideas convince you and how they achieve their purpose, which we've also worked out. But for simplicity and for time's sake here, we were looking at compare what the writer is saying, compare how they're portrayed rather than how they're conveyed. I hope that makes sense. It is tricky, but as I say, we're going to go over again in a further lesson how to answer essays.
Could you do me a favour?
Yes, Roger, yes.
I wondered if you know those 3 books that were at the start, Gone with the
Oh,
Wind.
yeah.
I think maybe I should read them.
Okay, that'd be nice because they are very strong perspectives in those.
Yeah, because obviously I need to read more, and I know that's in this because that is something I need to do.
Yeah,
if you can give me them, I could order them, and then because I need to start reading, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about that at the end, Rodri. I'm always happy to share book suggestions. We'll talk about that in the end.
Yeah.
Always happy to share that. But To Kill a Mockingbird is a very, very small book. It's often read for GCSE in schools. So yeah, really small. If you're going to read any, I would recommend that one. We'll give some more book recommendations at the end. You know that's my favourite part, is talking about which books to make you all read. So what have we learned in this lesson? Hopefully we have learned that perspective is a person's point of view, a person in real life or a person written down in literature or an article, any type of person's point of view. All perspectives can be valid and many are opposing. And we can generally find an author's main perspective in their introduction and conclusion. How to summarise an author's perspective. We've learned that you should show how an author conveys these ideas, not just what the ideas are. And we've learned that a comparative answer should show similarities and differences between the 2 texts. And we've learned how to provide suitable evidence to support your answer. We will be talking about that further. If you've got to the end of this lesson and you're thinking, I still don't know how to answer these essay questions, we're going to come across that more. This is just showing you how to locate perspectives and how to compare perspectives. Thank you very much. Thank you for another wonderful lesson, everybody. You're so fantastic. Happy to talk about any questions that people have now. Feel free to unmute. I'm going to pause the video now.